When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the courtyard of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people."
You know that moment when you get near the end of a book you haven't been able to put down? You want to know what happens. But you're so engrossed in the story, you so enjoyed it that you'd really quite like to carry on. You don't want it to end. That's pretty much where we find ourselves in this series. We've spent nearly 14 months in Matthew, and we're nearing the end. There's so much we've been witness to along the way. We've learnt about Jesus' identity, his mission, his teaching, that incredible Sermon on the Mount. We've learnt about his healings. We've seen him challenge the religious leaders. We've seen him challenge the temple, the symbol of everything that is wrong with the way people that are engaging with God, ending with Jesus turning the tables upside down, prophesying its destruction, with messages for you and for me within that. The problem for Jesus is this: the more you challenge, the more you get noticed. Those who are at greatest risk of losing their influence, in this case the religious leaders, the chief priests and the elders, in response, they get nervous. Whereas those who are being given new identity and value and opportunity and life, well, they get excited. Jesus may have just spent ages, or what feels like ages, talking about judgment, but the people love him. Your average person on the street, in the crowds, they love him. They love what he stands for, what he teaches, the love and compassion that he shows, the healing that he brings, the promise of a new right relationship with God that is for anyone who chooses to follow. These are people who love him. And there are tens of thousands of them gathered in Jerusalem right now, just as they did every spring to observe the festival of the Passover. Jewish people from the whole region taking part in the annual celebration of Israel's deliverance from Egyptian slavery. And whether they'd recognised it or not, Jesus was the new Moses, ready to lead God's people to freedom. Except the chief priests and the elders, well, they're having none of it. They were the ones with the influence and power, and they were going to make that count. Not by seizing and killing Jesus in the middle of Passover. That would be daft. It would probably lead to a riot. Instead, they'd have to be a bit smarter. So they'd use any means possible, any underhand tactics they could conjure up. Or as Matthew describes it, they would get rid of Jesus by stealth. It's possible you may never have seen it that way before. But keep that idea in your mind as over the next few weeks we journey through the events of the next 3 chapters. The bribery of Judas, the false witnesses who step up to testify against Jesus, the exaggerated accusations from the chief priests and the elders, the inciting of the crowds, the mocking of Jesus on the cross. Even after Jesus' resurrection, there are attempts to undermine him. Can you see it? This is not about right and wrong. Instead, as we'll discover through the words of Matthew, we're about to be witness to a carefully orchestrated smear campaign by the religious leaders, which even Pilate, Roman governor of Judea, could see was born out of jealousy. Their only mistake, well, that was not to recognise Jesus for who he really was. In fact, the chief priests and elders may well have been forgiven for thinking that for Jesus, this was the beginning of the end. The reality was that things were only just getting start.